All right, it is exactly, oh, that was loud. Sorry, y'all. It is exactly 6:30, and we have a jam-packed agenda, so we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Candace Cowart, and I'm a member here at Blackwater, but I'm also a member at St. Alphonsus Catholic Church. And I'm going to ask our pastor, Kennan, from Blackwater, to come up and lead us in an opening prayer, please.
Good evening. Welcome. Glad you're here. Let's pray. God, we thank you for this opportunity to gather, Lord, as a community. Lord, help our conversation to be honest and direct, and help us, God, to put our heads together, Lord, to see the ways that we can love our community and bring wholeness and the healing that you have for it. And so use us, God, in Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Kennan. So I'm very happy to see so many of y'all here tonight. I very much appreciate you being here. I'm just going to speak very briefly because I want to keep to our agenda, but we have a problem in our community. We have a problem in Central, we have a problem in Baton Rouge, in the state of Louisiana, and in every city and state across our entire nation. People are dying needlessly because of drug problems. So just some of the people that we have represented here tonight, we have families of victims. We have the Bliss family who lost a child, and you'll hear about their story. We have local pastors. We have the Gill family here who also lost a child to a drug driver. Again, pastors and deacons, the chief of police. We have our mayor, Wade Evans, here. Is Paul Sawyer here from Congressman Graves' office? Okay, all right. Rebecca Chasson from the Louisiana State Police Crime Lab. Lieutenant Williams from the State Police. Trudy Wickham from the Department of Health. So we have a lot of people in the room who are here tonight because we're standing up against this. So that's what we have to do. The messages that you were here tonight are raw, and they're intended to be raw. We're going to begin with some videos that Blue Cross Blue Shield produced that are intended to be a punch in your face. When I first went to Blue Cross and said, I want to produce these videos because I want people to pay attention. I don't want them to be sugar-coated. I want them to be, I think I said, a punch in the throat, and that's what they are. So tonight, I want everybody to open up, say what you really feel. The purpose of this meeting is to educate and to brainstorm about what else we can do in our community so that we can stop the deaths. All right, with that, we're going to roll. There are 3 fentanyl kills videos that Blue Cross produced. We're going to roll 2 of them. The first one is a public service announcement that tells you about what fentanyl is and why it's a problem. We're not going to do that one because the presentations that you will see are already going to cover that. So we're going to jump right to the other 2, and those are personal stories for families in our community. One of them is the Bliss family who lost their son, Alex. The other one is the McCulley family from Live Oak that lost their daughter, Victoria. So we're going to play both of those videos back to back. Each one is about 15 minutes long. So we'll go ahead and play straight through them, and then I'll jump back up here with y'all. So Ian, if you would, roll those videos, please.
Victoria McCulley was mine and my husband's oldest daughter. She was 29 years old. She was very close to me. She was very close to her brother, and she adored her baby sister.
Whenever I was younger, Victoria was the big sister that any little girl could ever want. She always would paint my nails whenever I wanted her to. We would always go in her room and watch Pretty Little Liars. I thought I was a big kid, just like her. She was definitely my best friend. When Victoria was 16 years old, she had a major mouth surgery.
After the medication, the recovery's done. Now she's back at school because she did homeschool during that period. And I later learned that Within a couple of weeks, she was actually buying pain pills off the street from a friend.
There's been a lot of experimenting with drugs once you get to a certain age or a certain stage of life. Thinking, I'm just gonna have some weed, it's not gonna hurt me, I'm just gonna chill. But it could be laced with fentanyl.
She was 18 years old. She had no job. She had started smoking the synthetic marijuana. She was always looking for something to crave the addiction. That was the beginning of a lot of different counseling, rehab programs. Over the course of time, her addiction had escalated to heroin use.
My parents could never tell when she was messed up. Oh, I knew it from the second, just the way she walked, the way she talked, the way she held herself.
She got pregnant. We were going to take custody of her son and let her get the help that she needed. She just could not get herself together, and she could never find sobriety to the point that she needed in order to take custody back and raise him the way he deserved to be raised. We did not hear from her for a little period of time, and then she went to jail. It truly got to a point where our daughter being in jail was a peace of mind for our family.
Me and my mom were in her bathroom getting ready because we had a whole bunch of family over. And this random number kept blowing my mom's phone up and would not stop. And it was my sister calling from jail. She wanted my parents to come get her that night, and my mom was just a wreck.
She was very demanding. And I said, what I can do is I can love you and I can pray for you until the end of my days. And she hung up on me. Every morning, I checked the parish prison website, and when I saw that my daughter was still in jail, I went about my day. I was at peace. At the very least, she was okay, or better than the alternative.
There's a concept with people who have substance use disorder called chasing the dragon. And basically it means that very first high is the best high that they'll ever experience in their entire lives. And they'll always be trying to get back to that great high, but they never get there. So the next time they use a little bit more, but they never get back to that great high. They never catch that dragon.
For Aiden's 8th birthday, Victoria was incarcerated. He was an 8-year-old kid that got a colored picture from his mother for his 8th birthday. Of course, he still has that. It's one of the very few things that Aiden has from his mother. She needed to come to my house. When she got here, she was worse than I had ever seen her. We knew that she had spun out of control. We could not allow her to live in our home. We had other children to protect. So we gave her an option, that option being that we would take her to a treatment facility or that we would let her use a phone to call a friend to come pick her up. She left walking in the rain. She was not ready at that moment to go to treatment. She was not in good shape.
We always start with recognizing the issue. And so whether that be recognizing it in ourselves, if we're the person that is addicted, or a family or friend or someone close to the person, recognizing it in that person. Once we've recognized it, then attempts have to be made to get the person the help that they need. You have to understand that they have to want to get better as well. But until the person who has the addiction decides they want to get better, then we have the opportunity to make a pretty significant impact.
I, last summer, worked in a rehab facility. I had texted Victoria, hey, this is where I'm working. I have an opportunity to where I can help you. She was a little iffy about it. And then one day she finally texted me and she was like, hey, I think I'm ready.
She was not demanding. She was not manipulating. She was truly begging for help. She come in the house. I went through her things. And while she ate her cereal, she just cried. Never saying anything, just tears. And I asked her, I said, Victoria, why are you crying? And she said, I'm so broken. I asked her, I said, Victoria, you scared? And she said, yes. So I said, what are you scared of? Rehab? She said, no, ma'am. I'm scared of reliving everything that I've put myself through. So I drove her to detox, and her daddy, my husband, met us there. She got out of the car. She said, I love y'all. And she walked in detox. We had great visits. We were spending quality time with our child. Not a drug, not a manipulator, no demands. It was a great month.
It was a Friday. I was coming home. I had a friend with me. We were coming to my house to get ready. We were gonna go to the game together.
And I walk in, and my husband's sitting at the end of the bar with his face in his hands. And when he looked up at me, I knew. He said, we lost her.
I dropped everything that I had in my arms and I just hit the ground.
I immediately grabbed my laptop and I typed in the parish prison. I said, she's incarcerated. Come to find out, she was not. She had been released 3 days before, and they found her in a hotel in Denham Springs where she had lost her battle.
Our community, our country is experiencing a crisis. We're losing the war on drugs. Every day, more and more people in our community and all across our entire country are dying from fentanyl poisonings.
It can happen to anybody. It's not a certain demographic. It's not a certain age. It's not just teenagers. It's not just adults. It's everybody.
And my concern moving forward is the more often this happens, how soon before 300 turns into 600 and then 600 turns into 1,200. We have a bad problem now that just becomes much, much worse.
The crisis that we're experiencing right now is young people and old people and everyone in between. And it's death.
What I would say to a struggling addict is, if you don't seek help, it will never get better. We couldn't let Victoria's addiction take everything we had, but we could still be available to get her help when she was asking for it.
If you're struggling with any drug usage, talk to somebody, get help.
Without a doubt, she knew she was playing with fire, as does everyone who is experimenting with drugs today. It's truly like playing Russian roulette.
My name is Dara Bliss. I'm married to Todd Bliss. I have 2 children, Alex, who died from fentanyl poisoning, and my daughter Angela.
Alex was my brother. He and I were 3.5 years apart. We always had a very good relationship growing up, and as we got older, we became close. We shared mutual friends. We started going out together, and it was always a blast because he always made me feel included.
He was just, a fun kid. He had a lot of friends. He made good grades.
He unfortunately got in with the wrong crowd and got in to stuff he shouldn't have, and he unfortunately passed away by himself. Alex's first, introduction into this world was maybe late middle school. He kind of hung out with the wrong crowd, and I believe it started off, just with weed. And he would party throughout high school. He had a big group of friends, and they were pretty popular, and so they would throw parties. They would get invited to parties. I would lie for him and tell Mom that, yeah, he's in bed, and he was gone. He had snuck out the window. And so, he enjoyed doing that. And he got his wisdom teeth taken out, and we believe that that was the kicker.
Opioid addiction oftentimes starts with a legitimate prescription. So you had a knee surgery, you were in a car accident, you went to the hospital, you were prescribed pain medication to help you with that acute injury. And some people are just genetically predisposed to addiction more than others. And so just a couple of doses and then they can become addicted to the medication. So not always the case, but that can happen.
We started seeing some changes in his behavior, and so started asking lots of questions.
We knew he was starting to dabble into something, we just didn't really know what, and we thought it was just pills.
And I remember my husband breaking down and just sobbing when he found out that Alex was using heroin.
So he and I actually lived together for a brief period of time, maybe a year or so. And there was one time I tried to drug test him after work because I didn't want to live with someone who, was going to do that. And he did not like that at all. And it actually caused a pretty big blow up between me and him. And I moved out, and in the process of that, I threw all his stuff outside. And I did actually bring him to a rehab around here one time, and we were almost there. And he said he forgot his wallet, and we turned around and he got whatever out of his car, and it turns out it was heroin that he forgot. And in the parking lot of the rehab, he snorted it right in front of me.
I do recall one time picking him up from rehab, and he did use that very same day, and I ended up having to bring him to the ER because he was overdosing.
I think what you have to remember when it comes to substance abuse, and we see it more often, I guess, with opioid addiction, is that the body in one instance is physically addicted to the drug. It needs it. Whatever it has done, all the what are considered positive effects, the euphoria, the way it makes you feel good, certainly the body then says, oh, I want to feel that way again.
Alex's motivation for using was to escape reality. He hated his reality. I never thought he would steal from my parents.
Angela and I had driven him to Texas, and he was to stay at this facility in Houston long term. He managed to find a way to get on a bus in Houston, and he came back here.
Come to find out, there were guns of my dad's that Alex had taken that night.
I think it was an old weapon, and I noticed it was gone, and it had been there just a few hours earlier. Alex had contacted his dealer, and he didn't have any money, but he passed that gun out of the window of the house and gave it to the dealer for drugs. And I was just so appalled, that he had a dealer come to our house, that he would steal something else from his dad.
He didn't care, but that wasn't him. That wasn't him. That was the addiction. And it took me a long time to realize that.
We really need to not think about people impacted by opioid use disorder as drug addicts or having a family member that's a drug addict. They're a person, they're a human being.
We were just so clueless, about the depth of his addiction.
Me and my mom were texting, and she told me that she couldn't reach Alex. She had been texting him and calling him, and I'd been texting him and calling him. I just kept picking up the work phone and dialing over and over.
I was at work, so I asked Angela to call him because sometimes he would respond to her, if he didn't respond to me. And she told me she was going to go to the sober house and check on him, and I asked her not to, because if something had happened to him, I didn't want her to be the one to find him.
So I left work and I drove there. And so I walk in and I see the doors cracked, whatever. And I walk in and he's on his bed, and I thought maybe he was sleeping. And whenever I found him, I just started screaming. And so I get 911 on the phone, and I tell her that my brother's overdosing. And I start trying to do CPR. And it didn't work. I tried so hard.
They can't just stop, and it's why do you keep using and lying? It's just awful.
And I actually have his bracelet that he died in. And it's just the one little other reminder I have of him. I thought he would be an uncle to my children. And now he's not gonna get that chance. He never even got the chance to get married and find love, and that just breaks my heart. He didn't have a chance to live happily.
It doesn't happen as much now, but in the beginning, when I would think about him being dead, it would literally just take my breath away. It's like my heart would skip a beat. And sometimes it still doesn't seem real. And I have to tell myself, my son is dead.
I wish I knew more about fentanyl before. I wish I knew that they were putting it in just about everything.
We've now seen the mixture of fentanyl in other drugs, specifically non-opioid drugs. So for example, cocaine, methamphetamine, and marijuana.
Anyone who doesn't know about it, know about fentanyl, or they have kids that are out partying and, playing with different substances, I would try to educate them, let them know that not everything is what it seems. Alex thought he was getting heroin, and it turned out to be pretty much straight fentanyl.
Heroin is a naturally occurring, even though processed, drug. Fentanyl, however, is a synthetic drug. It is created and made in a laboratory through use of chemicals, and because it does not require Mother Nature, it makes it, of course, very much an easier drug to produce. Consequently, it also is very much more powerful than heroin, and fentanyl will kill you. It kills you the same way as a bullet kills someone who is shot or someone who is stabbed with a knife.
The tox report showed just fentanyl. There was no heroin. And so I called and spoke to this officer who worked his death, and she actually remembered him, and I asked her why she remembered him. And she said, because he looked like the boy next door.
It can happen to anybody, right? It's not a certain demographic. It's not a certain age. It's not just teenagers. It's not just adults. It's everybody.
I don't think Alex knowingly took fentanyl. I even asked her, would he have known that what he had was fentanyl and not heroin? And she said he would not have been able to tell. I talked to Alex so much, and I tried to understand as best I could what he was going through, but I had no control. He was yelling one night, that he was just so sick of this and, hated this life and wanted it to stop. I just don't know if he knew how to make it stop. I wish that I had understood addiction better before I had a child who became an addict. I don't know, it's just, addiction is just such an awful disease and affects so many people.
I don't want any parent or any sibling or any friend or anyone to go through what I had to go through.
Pay attention to everything your child does and says and their behavior, and
Today, drug abuse is everywhere. It's doctors and lawyers, school teachers, police officers, judges, clergy in our churches. It's everyone. There's no rhyme, there's no reason, there's no socioeconomic status, no race. It doesn't matter. The crisis that we're experiencing right now is young people and old people and everyone in between. And it's death.
It's not something to play with. And please educate your children, educate your loved ones, because I wasn't educated and I wish someone had educated me.
I wish somebody had years ago tried to make me understand how dangerous Alex's addiction was. And I wish they had helped me to understand. His life was in danger.
But after he passed away, I saw in his Facebook messages that he had told one of his friends that he would like to start a family when he turned 30. He didn't even make it to 30.
Okay, so I've seen these videos. I was there when these videos were produced, and I've seen them 100 times, and I can't get through watching them without crying. And I see a lot of people in this room wiping their eyes too. These are completely unnecessary deaths, preventable deaths. And you heard both of these families pleading that if someone had just told me about this, if I had just known what was happening, if I had known what to look for, maybe it would have made a difference. If someone had been there with Narcan, with either Victoria or Alex, both of their lives would have been saved. So tonight, before you leave, we have Narcan for each of you. I've carried Narcan in my purse because if I come across somebody, my husband and I came across somebody in the Walgreens parking lot that was laid out in the seat. Luckily, he wasn't so bad that he needed Narcan, but it was an overdose happening, and that was 2 weeks ago in the Walgreens parking lot in Central. So this is too big of a story, too common. We could stay here all night long and probably all day tomorrow telling you all the different stories just in our community of the terrible things that are happening. But right now we're going to roll into Assistant Chief Cliff Ivey, who, where is he? There's Cliff right there. And Cliff is going to do a PowerPoint presentation just to tell you a little bit more about fentanyl in general and more of what we're seeing in Central.
Good evening, everyone. Lord have mercy. Good evening. My name is Cliff Ivey. I'm the Assistant Chief of Police for the City of Central. Next slide, please, Ian. So what is fentanyl? Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid. It is approved for use in the United States by the Food and Drug Administration. As you can see, it is a very potent drug, especially as it relates to, comparatively speaking, to morphine and heroin. It is commonly used for pain relief and for anesthesia. Most cases of fentanyl-related overdose deaths are linked to illegally made fentanyl rather than those made by the pharmaceutical companies. And, you know, if you believe the talking heads on TV and representatives from federal law enforcement, I mean, we know where it comes from. The precursor chemicals, the component parts, leave mainland China and go to Central South America, mostly Mexico, where they're put together and then trafficked over what is left of our southern border. They're often, as you saw from the videos, mixed with other drugs such as heroin, cocaine, and methamphetamine. As you saw before, in excess of 200 people die each day in the U.S. from overdose deaths related to synthetic opioids. Next slide, please, Ian. According to the coroner's office, we peaked in 2021 when it came to fatal overdose deaths, the majority of which were made up or tied to opioids. The last 2 years, those numbers have declined somewhat. Next slide, please, Ian. If you believe the CDC, between 2020 and 2021, life expectancy in the U.S. actually fell for 2 years. In part, not wholly, but in part due to an increase in overdose deaths due to opioids. Next slide, please, Ian. Now, this is an important number, especially in 2021. National overdose deaths involving any opioid, in 21, it was 80,400, okay? Just remember that number for 1 second because I want to compare it to, next slide, please, Ian. The total military deaths, combat casualties in the Vietnam conflict for 22 years, 58,213. 80,000 in 1 year. A shooting war in 22 years is only 58,000. Next slide, please, Ian. So what is your Central Police Department doing about it? Well, first, how I met Ms. Cowart and got to know our Councilwoman Deanne Wells a little bit better. In 23, the three of us were sent by the City of Central to participate in the East Baton Rouge City Parish Mayor President's Opioid Settlement Committee. It's been all over the news. Big Pharma got sued for how they were marketing opioid-related prescriptions to both doctors and the public. And the settlements have resulted into distributions to different governments. I think the Sheriff's Office has their own agreement, a settlement funding, the city parish, separate and apart from the city parish. But for, I believe it's the next 20 years, this money is going to be flowing to our city parish government to help combat this problem. The ultimate decision how that money is going to be spent will be made by the Mayor President and the Metro Council. Next slide, please, Ian. Well, although we kind of liken ourselves, our operating philosophy really is that Central Police is a life-saving organization. Part of that mission is accomplished through the enforcement of our criminal laws. And in Title 40, Title 40 makes up the majority of our drug manufacture, possession, and distribution laws. And according to Section 963 of Title 40, fentanyl is an opiate and classified as Schedule II, meaning it can be prescribed by a physician, but it has a high potential for abuse. Next slide, please, Ian. These are the penalties for manufacturing, producing, or distributing, or possessing with the intent to distribute fentanyl. And is largely the different grades of penalties are tied to both weight and how many times a person has been convicted before. These are not the penalties for simple possession, okay, because these are pretty high. But for example, and I left out a little bit, just for time purposes and to be able to fit it on the slide, but if you possess less than 28 grams, that very first penalty provision, if you go back just 1 second, not less than 5 nor more than 40 years if you, say, possess with intent to distribute. And here's an important part. Well, what does that really mean? Because we know, well, the law says somebody gets this amount of time. What do they really get? Well, for a first-time possession of less than 28 grams, that 5 years is actually without benefit of probation, parole, or suspension of sentence. That means you do that time. Now, how DOC is able to calculate it and your good time credits or whatever, but 5 of that years, the judge cannot suspend. That means you do it. For example, the second penalty provision, 28 grams or more, but less than 250. The sentence range is 7, but not more than 50 on a first offense. 7 of those years have to be served without benefit. Next slide, please, Ian. And those are just the other one. And as you can see, it gets really serious on a third offense, possession equal to 28 grams, but less than 250. It's 99 years on a third conviction. All of that, according to the legislature, has to be served without benefit. Next slide, please, Ian. This coming up will be, this is the sentencing ranges for simple possession. Okay, notice that the law treats people who may be addicted to drugs differently from those who want to poison our community by making it illegally, distributing it, selling it. There are no mandatory minimums in this that cannot be suspended. Next slide, please, Ian. Brand new, we had 2 extraordinary sessions of the legislature this year. The first one was crime-centered, and I think Ms. Chasson will talk a little bit more about it, but this one is geared to enhancing the penalty provisions for people who make drugs, that do things, that package them or make them in shapes and colors that would be more attractive to children. And that carries not less than 25, no more than 99 years without benefit. Next slide, please, Ian. Another way that we combat fentanyl use, or where it turns up, is in the context of driving while intoxicated arrests. I've noticed that here lately we are rarely using the Intoxilizer 9000 breath test machine. That tests for one thing only, and that's alcohol, ethyl alcohol. But as you can see, you can be arrested and convicted for the crime of driving while intoxicated if you are under the influence of a controlled dangerous substance listed in, as it relates to fentanyl, Schedule 2. Next slide, please, Ian. How do we do that? Well, we can't use the breath alcohol test machine, so we get these kits from Ms. Chasson's company at State Police. We have to go find a qualified person to administer the test. We don't turn cops loose with syringes to stick in people's arms. And it is much more time consuming for us as well. I know that there are programs, Baton Rouge Police has co-opted with the Highway Safety Commission. They have nurses on standby at different times. They pay nurses to offer their services to where we can go. I believe the majority of the time they're stationed at BRPD headquarters right there at Florida Airline. It's fairly central in the parish. And we could go and have those tests administered there. So what happens if somebody in a context such as this refuses the test? Well, now we are using search warrants a lot more frequently to get that. We electronically, it's a lot easier. You're not 2 o'clock in the morning knocking on the judge's door to get a search warrant signed. Internet, technological improvements, we can do it from our laptop. Hit the send button, it goes to the judge, wakes him up with an alert on his phone, he goes to his computer and can approve or deny the search warrant, and we execute it then. Next slide, please, Ian. Okay, this is important, and this is a policy choice made for us by our legislature. So the top portion of this has to do with me calling for my buddy. We're both drug users, and my buddy is OD'd, is in medical distress, and I have whatever kind of drug in my pocket. Well, under letter A, I should have no fear picking up the phone and calling 911 and having an emergency response to save him, and I end up being arrested. I can't be. Okay, for mere drug possession or a violation of the Controlled Dangerous Substance Law. Letter B protects the actual drug user who is experiencing medical distress and may have drugs on their person, and you have to get them help. Okay, so there should be no fear in our state that, oh, I've used drugs, I need to be reluctant to reach out for help, even though I may be in medical distress. Now, pay attention to the wording on that. It exempts you from arrest and prosecution for drug possession. I'm going to use an instance from where our chief a few years ago, there was a young man driving through Central, used too much drugs, and left the roadway, and the only thing that stopped him in his vehicle was a tree. Fire department gets there, we get there, and we're trying to figure out who it is, because he's out, he's unconscious. Go into his wallet, look for his driver's license. It's not just his driver's license in his wallet, he's got drugs in there. Well, he is immune from being arrested or prosecuted for the drug possession, not from the operating a vehicle while intoxicated. And our chief actually had to go to court for that along with our other officer, and they did obtain a conviction. So that is how those two provisions in our law work. Next slide, please, Ian. Also happening a few years ago, our chief and I decided what we're going to do for the year as far as training. He says, well, let's look at getting all of our guys Narcan, or also as it's known, naloxone. Well, before we did that, we sent all of our people, and it was surprisingly 100% attendance rate, because we tied it to the day that we also went to the pistol range to have to requalify. And Chief Branscombe, I believe, was the one that actually taught the classes for us himself. So it was a great partnership with Central Fire. But the reason, the importance for it is, blame the lawyers, but you get a heightened sense, you get a heightened immunity from suit if you have attended the training or put them through the training before. You allow them to use it, and then for some chance something goes wrong when they do. Next slide, please, Ian. This is the Narcan, actually, that we use and we distribute to our officers. It is obviously, as you can tell, the nasal spray. Next slide, please, Ian. As far as local resources go, the Bridge Center for Hope is a great place. Usually, we have had instances where a parent, usually it's parents or relative, has turned to us. My child's on drugs. They don't know where else to turn. A lot of times insurance is an issue. They don't ask you for insurance there. Okay, we have transported many people to the Bridge Center. They're open 24/7. They'll take you at any time, no questions asked. And it's not just substance abuse issues, it's also mental health. Next slide, please, Ian. Another avenue for resources is if you go try to get an order of protective custody, to have somebody transported to hospital and being evaluated by a doctor. Certainly the services of Dr. Bo Clark's office is there as well. So now I get the pleasure of introducing someone I've heard 2 years in a row, and I'm gonna rat myself out on this. I love going to the Southeast Louisiana DWI conference because representing our police department, but I also get my continuing legal education credit for free as an attorney. And that also leads me, and I saw her presentation actually a few weeks ago, and unfortunately it was the same day we had the fatality on Jor. The young lady crossed over, hit the more mature woman head on, and it resulted in her death. But I actually got to see her presentation that day, and actually the way everything started, when Ms. Cowart spoke to me about doing something for this, I said, well, I'm going to go see Miss Rebecca Chasson and steal some of her PowerPoint. And then finally, I think she just wanted me out of her office, and she told me, do you just want me to come? And I was like, absolutely. So, and you hear, I think it unfortunately is resurfacing in the news lately about drug labs. I think there's a scandal going on in Denver, Colorado. And there was one a few years ago, but when this meant a lot to me. About 20 years ago when I was in law school, I took a class of post-conviction relief, and one of the most prominent criminal defense attorneys in the Baton Rouge area, and he said the gold standard was the Louisiana State Police Crime Lab. So we are lucky to have a pillar of that institution here with us tonight. So, Ms. Chasson.
I was just standing right here. This is fine. So thank y'all for having me. I really appreciate the invitation and the ability to speak with y'all. And it wasn't just trying to get you out of my office. I did this recently for Livingston Parish when they had a town hall. So this is part of what I do for a living is educating about these dangerous substances. Next slide, please. So this is the trend line for heroin. When I started at the lab in 2004, heroin was like a unicorn. It carried a life sentence for distribution, so when we'd see it in training, we'd all run over to that person, and it was like little teeny tiny little foil packets with like brown crumbles in it. And we were like, ooh, the mysterious heroin, because we didn't see it. And then as they started to change our laws of mandatory sentencing, we would see that it would grow in popularity because there's less of a penalty for distribution or trafficking. And so we really peaked around 2019 with our heroin numbers. We not only saw more cases, but we saw larger cases. We started seeing kilos of heroin where the DEA didn't even care about it. They were just letting it come through our laboratory. Before that, if we would get a kilo of heroin, the DEA would be on the door knocking saying, we need that. We want that for our laboratory. We want to prosecute this as a federal case. So next slide, please. So heroin, we have to talk about where it all begins. So heroin is a poppy plant. It is grown. It takes a field. It takes water. It takes sunlight. And what it does, it takes human hands to go out there, and they call it milking the poppy. They milk the poppy. A nice white substance comes out. They let it dry. It turns into a tarry substance called opium. They then convert chemically in the field a conversion of the morphine 1-to-1 to heroin, meaning for every molecule of morphine they have, they will create 1 molecule of heroin. And then, of course, it comes in different forms. We see it in white powder, brown powder. We used to see a lot of black tar heroin. We don't really see it that much anymore. And now we start to see it compressed into what we call counterfeit pharmaceuticals. Next slide. So I was asked a few years ago by a law enforcement officer, how many times when the law enforcement officer thinks it's heroin, but it's really not heroin. So I went back all the way to 2015, and in 2015, 97% of the time when a law enforcement officer looked at a substance, and from their knowledge and their training, they said, that's heroin. I'm gonna write suspected heroin. 97%. Well, in 2022, that went all the way down into the 20%. So as we can see, not only does the fentanyl look like heroin in the field to our trained law enforcement, that it's probably even giving them false positives on their field tests, because it is an opioid drug. Next slide, please. So then we have to look at our fentanyl numbers. So the top line is our fentanyl and what we call phenologs. And these are related substances to fentanyl that are very potent and very dangerous. There's a little teeny tiny line at the bottom that's blue that you can barely see. These are the nitazene or nitazene drugs. I've heard it pronounced either way. This is an emerging category of opioid drugs that we are seeing emerge. So they could very well take the place of fentanyl in the near future. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that category of opioid drugs. Next slide, please. So this is the slide that should really scare y'all. 72 to 75% of the pharmaceuticals we get seized by law enforcement and brought to our laboratory are counterfeit. This is the opposite of Russian roulette. This is just taking one bullet out the chamber and leaving the rest in there. 75%. So they look at a pill, they think it's Xanax based on the logo, they think it's oxycodone based on the logo, they bring it to us, we say, this looks a little funny, and we scrape it and we analyze it, and it says oxycodone, but we get fentanyl. Or it says it should be amphetamine, and we get methamphetamine. So it is abundantly popular that they are actually pill pressing either domestically or foreign, and then smuggling them in already pre-pressed. Next slide, please. So as discussed, there are 2 forms of fentanyl. There's the type that you get from your physician when you have surgery or if you have a terminal disease. That's important to know that that is called fentanyl citrate. And fentanyl citrate is actually less potent than the stuff that they're making up in the laboratories, which is fentanyl hydrochloride. So there is a difference between the 2. So the illicitly made stuff is actually a little bit more potent than the legitimate pharmaceutical brands. The other thing to keep important to know is that I have politicked many times with the people that I work with, that I personally think, in my humble opinion, that fentanyl should be a dual schedule drug. If it's not in pharmaceutical form, in the form of a lollipop or a patch, it should be Schedule 1. That is my humble opinion, because it is meant to kill at that point in time. It's not meant to treat when you have cancer. It's not meant to treat when you have surgery. It's not meant to treat any legitimate problem. It is meant to kill. So next slide, please. So according to the CDC and the DEA, that a typical lethal dose is about 2 milligrams. So we were talking about 14 grams earlier with the law. Just keep in mind that, like, if you want to know how much a milligram is, about the amount of sugar in a sugar packet is about a gram. Slice that up into 1,000 pieces, 1,000 of those, and 2 of those is what's a fatal. So it doesn't take a whole lot. And the other thing is to get to 28 grams on possession, it doesn't take a whole lot. It takes 28 sugar packets. So next time, if you want to visualize how much that amount is, think about that sugar packet. So when you hear people getting caught with kilos, which is 2.2 pounds, or pounds of this stuff, just imagine the lethal magnitude of that seizure. And so fentanyl is related, there's a lethal range that we see on toxicology reports. My heart went out for the family with that young man that passed away. But the scary thing is that we are now having a population of users that are developing a higher and higher ability to take more and more of the drug. We had someone that led police on a high-speed chase in Livingston Parish. They finally got him in custody, realized he was impaired, got a warrant, got his blood, sent it to us. When we analyzed his blood, he had 191 nanograms per mil fentanyl in his blood. He should have been dead 10 times over, but that is how tolerant he had become to the drug. So people are driving very impaired on fentanyl. About 20% of all the blood samples that we now process have fentanyl on board. Years ago, we never saw it. But 20%? That's 1 out of 5. You gotta think, that's a tremendous amount. So we see ethyl alcohols are number 1, THCs are number 2, and methamphetamine and fentanyl are battling out for number 3. And that's a very scary statistic. Next slide. Oh, and the other thing I want to mention from that last one is we see it in less than co-occurrence of fentanyl with cocaine in less than 3% of our cocaine cases and less than 1% of our methamphetamine cases. We have currently not detected it on marijuana. That doesn't mean it's not coming, but our laboratory has not seen it. I know it has been reported out in other parts of the nation, and I know that the East Coast, some of their cocaine samples are upwards of 30%. So it is geographic where the trends are and when they're mixing it. Just know that for your knowledge, that we are not seeing it as often as some other crime labs are reporting. This is all the fentanyl-related drugs that we have seen over time. Some of them, like heroin, are semi-synthetic, but for the vast majority of them, all the rest of them are completely synthetic. The U drugs are a very special category of drugs because these drugs were developed by Upjohn with the intention of leading to market, but it never could pass the test of the addictability of these drugs, so they never released them under patent. But what happens is that smarter people than me that know how to use the interweb find what these molecules look like, and then they can actually research on how to create these molecules, and then they sell them online as research chemicals. So that's kind of how they get around that whole game. Next slide, please. So the nitazines or the nitazines. This is a new emerging category of drug. They first appeared in the United States about 2019. The ones with the red check mark next to them are the 8 that we currently have in Schedule 1 in our statute. We are working with the pharmacy board. We're adding some more this year in the large session, so we will be on top of it. We do an annual update with the pharmacy board every year to make sure we have a good, robust schedule in revised statute 40. Next slide, please. So these drugs are commonly trafficked. They're commonly put in counterfeit pharmaceuticals. The good news about this drug, if there is any good news, they do respond to Narcan. So they do bind to the same receptor site in the brain and in the body that other opioids bind to, so that Narcan, if dosed, should assist them in recovering. Just keep in mind the potency of these drugs also affect how many doses of Narcan you need to give. So if someone is overdosing on a very powerful opioid drug, one and done may not do it. Dose them, get them to the emergency room, let them handle it. Don't ever think that if you hit them with Narcan and they wake up, they can't also go back into that overdose. So the data I saw that's coming out of emergency rooms is that these drugs actually take more Narcan, and the hospital stays are actually longer for people who have tested positive for these on their toxicology. Next slide, please. So this is not an opioid drug, but I thought I would include it. A lot of our opioids are being cut with xylazine or Tranq or the zombie drug. This drug is used in veterinary medicine for large animals. It is Narcan resistant. It does cause necrosis. I'm gonna warn you, if you go to YouTube and you put in xylazine videos, you will see The Walking Dead, except it's not a fake show on TV. It's real people in our communities around the country that are getting this drug that's been mixed with other drugs, and it does cause horrible sores and lesions. According to the DEA, that once the fentanyl makes it over the border is when the dealers actually cut it or step on it, or however you want to say. And normally fentanyl is cut 3 to 7 times before it gets to the end user. So there's a higher and higher possibility that the fentanyl or the counterfeit pharmaceutical that someone has xylazine or other related non-opioid drugs in there. And then because it's not Narcan resistant, then if they're having an overdose with xylazine on board, they may not be able to get the reversal effect with just the Narcan. Next slide. So that's my information. If you want to write it down, I'm always willing to help answer questions. Y'all can email me, y'all can call me. That is my direct line to my desk at work. I love helping people out in communities in our state. Like I said, this is part of what I do for a living, and working with great officers and great community members, this like the highlight of my day. So just if y'all have any questions, I'm gonna be here for the question and answer part, and I'll be happy to answer anyone's questions.
Thank you, Rebecca. Rebecca and I met years ago, and I don't know how many times at this point she has spoken for me, but it's a whole bunch. I train law enforcement officers through an organization called the National Association of Drug Diversion Investigators, and Rebecca is always our most highly sought after speaker. She's actually coming to Natchitoches for us next week to speak and train law enforcement officers about, it's an hour-and-a-half long presentation on all the things that she just told you so that they understand the information that she just gave you. So one of the things that occurred to me with Cliff's presentation and Rebecca's presentation, we have, I think we said 211 people dying every day in the country. So that's basically an airplane full of people crashing on a daily basis. So if that was actually happening, so imagine every morning when you wake up, the headline story is an airplane with 211 people has crashed into a mountain and everyone was killed. And the next morning, and the next morning, and the next morning, wouldn't we be talking about that? Everybody would be talking about it. It would be on the news, on every channel. We'd be talking about it at getting coffee, at restaurants, everywhere we went. It would be the only thing that anybody's talking about. Well, it's happening, but nobody's talking about it. Because it's not an airplane crashing into a mountain, because it's people who are dying, and it's not all over the news, nobody's talking about it. And that's what we have to fix. Until we start talking about it, every family talks about it every day, every church, every school, every teacher, everybody talks about it, we're not going to get anywhere. Because everybody has to understand the information that y'all have just been given by these speakers, and they don't. They don't. Okay, so I want to give everybody that's here that wants to speak an opportunity to speak. We're doing great on time. So I'm going to start. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, if you'll, we're just going to kind of go around the room and let everybody, and I'll make sure everybody that wants a chance to speak can. I'm going to start with our Chief of Police, Roger Corcoran. I'm sure Roger's going to mention this to you, but if he doesn't, I'm going to tell you. Roger's our Chief of Police. He's out there every day trying to fix this problem, but he's lost a child to it too. So it's super personal to him, Roger.
And first of all, my wife was supposed to be here. I apologize. She just couldn't do it. This disease, addiction, whatever you want to call it, it's out there. These drug dealers and manufacturers, they don't care. They don't care about me, you, our children, our grandchildren. It can happen to anyone. You see, I'm standing here in uniform. My wife, my lovely wife, she lost a child, my stepdaughter, to addiction, to this disease. She fought it for a long time, 10 years. I was the hard one. I was the hard one on my wife during all this time. but it affects everyone. It affects their children. Me and my wife are raising 2 children, 2 of the 3. We have been for 7 years. She passed away, I think it's been 4 years ago. And I sad to say, wow, when I looked at saw those videos, because she passed away exactly 30 days before her 30th birthday. She was 29. You have to lean on everybody out there. I've leaned on some people here. Our mayor, he was there during this time for me. Mr. Robert was there. There was a Cliff. It's tough. And we have to watch everything that's going on and watch where they're going, what they're doing, who they're hanging with, the whole 9 yards. I've seen it for many, many years. I've been doing it for 40. And I've seen it time and time again. It's real. It's real. I know there's a face in here that I'm looking at that fought that addiction too. And I listened to his story several times, and it's tough. And it can be beat, but it's going to take all of us to beat it. It's going to take all of us to stand up. And this police department is fighting it. And we're training on it, and we've been dealing with it a lot. We have in the city of Central, we've had our share, fair share, more than our fair share of overdoses. And Narcan, if we can get it, it'd take a case, But let's fight it together, and let's stand up together, and let's pray together about all this. And to you families that have gone through this, my heart goes out to you. I've been there on that side of it, and I've seen it from my side too, from the law enforcement side, and it's helpless. God bless you.
I want to thank the families for sharing your stories. Everyone in this room has been impacted somewhere or another by addiction. And the hardest thing is, the Bible calls for us to love others. But addiction says to use tough love. And it's the hardest thing to love somebody, but to cut them off and to walk away. And so you're in direct conflict with what Jesus tells us. And I don't know the answer, but I've experienced it. We all have. My brother, I don't know where he's at. I don't know what he's doing. I don't know if he's alive. I don't think he's dead, or I would have found out. But I had to cut that off to stop the pain. It's in many ways you feel like it's better to mourn them and get past it, but then you never know. And so I commend the families who put themselves out there to make a video to raise awareness. This community, I get notices multiple times a week, and this is where I take issue with the law. Because many of the calls we get are from bystanders who see an unconscious person not responding in a car. And I would love to see us do something about that if we can. I don't know, but they're not protected because they're called by a bystander. And the bystander, and so to me, when someone's in a car passed out, I think whatever we can do to get them either in jail or in treatment is what we need to do. It's painful. My neighbor, their son thought he was buying Lortabs, and they killed him because they weren't Lortabs, they were fentanyl. I have a friend who was well respected in the greater Baton Rouge area, thought he was going to have a night of fun with some cocaine, and he died in a hotel room, him and his companion. So it's a travesty that we're dealing with. I don't have the answer. I mean, I know I struggle. My daughter just had hip dysplasia surgery, and my wife works with Candace at Blue Cross. and we gave her the Lortabs, the oxycodone, for 3 days at the hospital and 1 day at home, and we've weaned her off because I'm so scared of what my 16-year-old daughter may become if we allow this medicine that was designed to help us destroy her, which we all know that's how it happens. And it requires us in this community to love the families and love the addict. The family feels shame. I know, I've experienced that shame. You feel shame. As a parent, when your kid messes up, you feel that shame. And you don't want to reach out because it looks bad. Let's face it. We're a city of 30,000, but we're still very small. I mean, I know many of you in this room, even though we don't see each other on a regular basis. And so how do we break the stigma and love the addict, love the family, and stop letting this be a secret? Central lost on average of 1.5 people a week to overdose. And that's a scary number, here in good old Central. And so I appreciate all of you coming out tonight. I wish I had the answers. All I have is heartache, and I'm willing to be real. I'm willing to be tough as we can. But most people who are suffering from addiction, they didn't wake up and say, I want to ruin my life. That's just the reality of it. And so we have to be compassionate. And, I struggle, Pastor, with love and tough love. Because it's two completely different things. But we have to be careful when love becomes enabling. And I sat in a many Alateen classes right here on this campus when I was a kid, because I was a child of drug addicts and alcoholics. And so I understand, and I understand how to break the cycle. I know that. But my brother was raised in the same house. So when people say, well, they were raised by good parents. No, it has nothing to do with the parenting. OxyContin, my brother had orange stains on his shirts from getting the time release off so he could crush them up and sniff them. And he would always say, you want to try it? And I never would. I was always scared, thankfully. I thank God every day that I never went down that road. But it's available to our kids. It's available. And look, OxyContin was safe. You knew what it was. Lortabs in a prescription form from Mexico, there was a time where you could do that. But now it'll kill you. You don't know what you're getting. So if we take nothing from this, just know that if you need somebody to talk to, I will always listen, and my office is always open, and I'll cry with you because I feel the pain that you felt and are feeling. And if I could enact laws and get my council to pass laws to make it to where we could fix it, believe me, we would. But the one thing, and Chief, you and I can talk more, is when we get those calls from the bystander, that we get there and this person is passed out, I believe their best help is to be incarcerated or in a hospital on their way to incarceration, to at least give them a wake-up call if that's possible. So thank you.
My wife's daughter, my stepdaughter, her name was Lindsay Langwall. She has a name.
Thank you for that. So we're going to continue going around the room, but I just want to mention something else. So we talked about illicit fentanyl, but you just heard some drug abuse begins with a legal prescription. You get a legal prescription. I think both of our videos, the families say that potentially a dental procedure, legal prescription, but it just clicked in the kids' brains, and suddenly it became an addiction. So we have to worry about that as well. So I'm going to bring up Miss Rochelle Gill to tell you a little bit about what happened to her daughter.
Good evening. My name is Rochelle Gill. I am originally from New Orleans. I moved to Baton Rouge last year. My story starts with my 18-year-old daughter. She was killed November 2nd of 2022 by an impaired driver. A 71-year-old lady who broke her back 3 years prior was still taking pain medicine and fell asleep behind the wheel of her car and drifted into my daughter's lane and hit my daughter head on, which also knocked my daughter's car into more incoming traffic, and she was hit again. My daughter was killed on the scene around the corner from home. It did start with her being prescribed pain medication that she just constantly abused over time. And I don't know if she thought that she would still be able to function constantly taking pain medication. At the time of the crash, she was found with 2 different narcotics in her system. So at 71, you would think that someone would know better. But when someone has an addiction and a problem, they don't know better. And they think that they're invincible. And they think that debt won't ever come knocking at their door. And it did. And my daughter had to pay the price of that. If this woman would have been more responsible, my daughter was sitting in a turning lane at a standstill, 2 seconds from home. If she was able to make the left turn, 2 seconds, she would have been home. My middle son heard the crash and walked around the corner to just see what happened and found his sister. He couldn't even get her out of the car. The fire department had to come with the jaws of life just to get her doors off. But it was too late. She graduated high school May of 2022, and I had to bury her November of 2022. So this problem is everywhere. This happened in New Orleans. So instead of taking my daughter on vacation for her 19th birthday, I had to bury her. So I just wanted to share my story. Her name was Micaiah Amari Arnold.
Thank you, Rochelle. Okay, Miss Trudy Wickham. Miss Trudy's from the Department of Health. She's brought Narcan for everybody. She's another person who I look to all the time to help us in the community with different things.
This is a disease. Someone mentioned it as a disease. It's just like my high blood pressure. Some of you all might be diabetics out there. We have to address this as that. If these people could change this craving that they're feeling for these drugs, it would. You saw that partially in the video. So I want us to really get our head around how can we be an advocate for someone who is in this addiction disease
Miss Trudy,
situation.
they can't hear you on Facebook Live. So
Oh, we on Facebook Live. Oh my God, oh my God. Okay, all right, we're streaming. So I have a couple of things I want to share with you. We also have an event coming up on April 30th at the Goodwood Library. It's called Listen and Learn About the Opiate Epidemic, Voices of the Resilient, and I definitely want you to be there because we want you to hear the stories of persons who are in recovery and also family members who have lost someone who are rebuilding their lives. So please come. I have some handouts here for that event. I also have some brochures that I'm going to let you have in a minute. But I also have show and tell. We were talking about the counterfeits. 7 out of 10 pills on the street right now are counterfeits, meaning fake, meaning they have been laced with fentanyl, okay, or carfentanil, which is the animal tranquilizer. So if you received from your doctor an oxycodone prescription and you've put that bottle in your medicine cabinet and you said, I'm just going to save it for that rainy day, don't save it anymore. Do not keep leftover medication in your household unless you can lock it up. People are taking your good pill and making bad pills out of it by lacing it with fentanyl. And they can get an easy pill press through Amazon. So that's the low-time drug dealer. They just get their stuff from Amazon. But yes, you can pass that around. This one is a little bit easier to see. It's called Rainbow Fentanyl. And what does it look like? Look like candy. So who are they marketing to? Children. So you can pass this around too. All right. Now, what I'm here to talk about is you can help save a life, and thank you for carrying that Narcan with you. I have finally become brave enough to start carrying it in my purse because just like you said, you're in the parking lot at the grocery store and you find someone slumped over in the car. So I'm going to ask you to hold this. Narcan is a lifesaver. It's a way for you to reverse an overdose. So this is what it looks like. They're just little easy nasal sprays. And let me tell you, I have to correct some people because they see Narcan nasal spray on the box. And I've had several people come up to me at a resource fair and they said, oh, I need that. I need that. I said, why do you need it? Because I have sinus problems. So ladies and gentlemen, this does not help your sinuses. It's only to reverse an overdose. So supposedly you don't know what they took. What are you going to do? You still use the Narcan. Even though you don't know what they took, this will not hurt them. We also talked about the law that will protect you if you are trying to save someone's life. It's called the Good Samaritan Law. So don't be afraid to use it. She was going to use it in the parking lot. She would have been saved by not being arrested by helping to save someone's life. So let me just show you. Let's say you're in your home and your relative went up to the bathroom and they never came down. You knocked on the door of the bathroom and you said, Uncle Joe, are you in there? Uncle Joe's not responding. So you open the door and you find Uncle Joe sprawled out on the floor. So you go to Uncle Joe and you shake Uncle Joe. Uncle Joe, wake up. Uncle Joe's not coming around. Then you want to take your knuckles and you want to rub him in his sternum real hard. If Uncle Joe can wake up, Uncle Joe will wake up, okay? Then you said, I know I have Narcan in the house. Let's see. I don't know what Uncle Joe took. You don't see nothing around him. But you're going to go get that Narcan. And just like I'm holding it here, you're going to take it and you're going to place this part of the Narcan all the way in his nostril and then hit the plunger. Don't prime it out here. You don't have to prime it. You take it. You hold it just like that between you, and you can pass this one around.
Shouldn't we call 911 before we administer?
I'm sorry. Thank you.
As soon as you find someone down and unresponsive, do a sternal rub. If they don't respond, call 911, then get the Narcan. Exactly. It's one of the most misunderstood things about Narcan. I refer to it, because that's how it was taught to me, as second fall syndrome. If you administer Narcan, because this happens all the time with paramedics. My husband from Acadian Ambulance is sitting right there, and he can tell you. They administer Narcan, the person wake up, they refuse to be transported. They say that they're going to go home. They go home, they crawl in their bed. The Narcan wears off. The fentanyl's still in their body. They die in their sleep, and no one ever knew the difference. It's one of the pieces of education that we've got to get out there, and it's one of the things that Trudy does such a great job of talking about.
So thank you. Yes, you have called 911 when you found Uncle Joe on the floor and he's hardly breathing or not breathing at all, because you want to listen for his breathing. Another thing you might check is his fingernails might be discolored or his lips discolored. That means that oxygen is not getting into his body properly. So then you pull out the Narcan and you administer it just like I told you. Then you want to take Uncle Joe and roll him as well as you can on his side so that if he has to throw up, he will not choke. Then you're going to get someone, if you don't have your phone handy, said, hey, someone downstairs, put the timer on 2 minutes. Wait 2 minutes. When that timer goes off, if Uncle Joe still hasn't come around and the paramedics still haven't arrived, you want to administer another one. There's 2 in every box, all right? So you can administer the other one. Roll Uncle Joe back on his back, push his head back, put the other one in the other nostril if you remember which one you put it in. If you don't freak out. You can put it in the same one. It won't be a problem. Okay, another thing you can do, this is your uncle. You love him. You can give him rescue breathing, because what's happening is Uncle Joe is not breathing. So you want to get as much oxygen in Uncle Joe as possible. And if that can, if it's somebody that you know, the person you saw in the parking lot, maybe not, but Uncle Joe is your uncle. So hopefully by that time the paramedics have arrived. So Uncle Joe is maybe coming around, or the paramedics need to administer another dose. But what you want to do is when Uncle Joe comes around, he's going to not feel that good. He's going to be irritable. He, like I said, he might have already thrown up. He is feeling awful. He may not want to go with the paramedics. I'm fine. Leave me alone. You get Uncle Joe to go with the paramedics, okay? Because just like she said, in 30 to 90 minutes, he could reverse back into that overdose. And now you're out of Narcan, and you need professional help. They can do a lot more for him at the emergency room than what can happen in your house. But you need him to go with the paramedics. A couple other things I want to share is when we talk about this addiction, this disease, we also want to talk to our children about our genetics. 40 to 60% of us have a gene inside of us that is prone for addiction. And you mentioned this was in your family. Don't talk, Uncle Joe came to the family reunion and y'all started saying, oh, just ignore him, ignore him. Start talking to your children about what's going on with Uncle Joe. Uncle Joe has a disease. It happens to be that he's addicted to opiates or whatever, it's alcohol or whatever it is, because that same gene is in your child. And you don't want them to go through life just lollygagging and don't realize that you are very susceptible to having that same addiction as Uncle Joe. And you don't want to live your life like Uncle Joe. Uncle Joe may have tried numerous times, and he can still try, and he can beat that addiction. But it's very, very hard when you have that gene inside of you. Questions? Anything about the Narcan? I have some here for you guys to take home if you'd like to. Thank you.
Thank you, Trudy. Other signs of overdose, vomit that looks like oatmeal or grits, bubbles coming out of the nose or mouth, like they appear to be vomiting bubbles. Those are both signs of overdose as well. Yes?
The family members will report that they're snoring, and it's actually they're not taking as many breaths as they need. So they're taking 1 or 2 a minute, and they think they're sleeping, but really they're in the middle of an overdose.
Agonal breathing, right? Agonal breathing. So super, super slow breathing, only breathing a couple of times a minute. All right, Deacon Cush.
I'm also blessed with this gene you're talking about. I've been in recovery for alcoholism. And today I hear a lot of people, a lot of families have parties, and I never got involved in drugs, thank God. But people have parties and the kids are underage, but you know it's okay because they're at home and they're not driving and it's going to be okay. Well, sooner or later, that addiction thing can lead into other things, smoking marijuana. If this stuff is mixed in with marijuana, like they talk about, I mean, one time can kill a person. And that's not something, but I see more and more families, good people, are just, it's okay. It's okay. He drinks a beer, he drinks whiskey, or she does, but they're at home with me, and it's okay because that's what we do. I'm not anti-alcoholic, but it can kill you. Most people in recovery and alcoholism don't recover. Most people die. I've been blessed. I've been sober 36 years, and I thank God for that because no telling where I would be today. It's a thing that back when drinking was not so much okay as a young person. Today it seems like it's more and more acceptable because they're at home, they're not hurting anybody. But it can lead these addiction, the genes you talk about follow, and they do follow families. I know from a victim of alcoholism in my family myself. So, and we don't wake up in the morning like we talked about and say, I want to destroy my life and become an alcoholic, or I want to destroy my life and do drugs. It just happens. The devil gets a hold to you and you can't turn loose and you really don't know. I prayed all my life not to be an alcoholic. And I woke up one day and guess what? I was an alcoholic. And today I do thank God for my alcoholism so that I can stand here and maybe help someone else who is suffering from this alcohol, family, or the person who is drinking or doing drugs, because I think that's what our life is about, being here tonight to try to help someone else.
Thank you, Deacon. Yes, ma'am. Here, listen, we'll just make sure we use the mic. So
Okay. I don't know if you can answer this for me, but it makes me wonder how safe our pharmaceutical drugs are. Do we get them from other countries?
So I'll give a quick answer and then I'm gonna hand the mic to Rebecca. Get your medications from a reputable pharmacy. Getting them from other countries presents a tremendous amount of danger, and even getting them from pop-up pharmacies, mom and pop pharmacies can also be really dangerous if that pharmacy is not being super, super careful who they buy from, because black market drugs find their way back into the mainstream drug supply by way of falsified pedigrees and things like that. So, Rebecca, do you have anything to add? Yeah, purchasing drugs from the internet is not good. Now, that does not mean that if you're like a Blue Cross member who uses Express Scripts and you get your medications through the mail from Express Scripts, that is different. I'm talking about going online to a pharmacy or going online to any of these many drug sites that will let you text message them and they'll give you your prescriptions. Please don't do that. You have no idea what you're getting. Marijuana, real quickly, I wanted to address that. Deacon Cush brought it up. This is Candace's personal opinion, not the opinion of Blue Cross Blue Shield nor Blackwater United Methodist Church. Marijuana is the gateway drug. All our kids think marijuana is no big deal, and I will sit down and argue with anybody for a whole day, and I promise you I'll win at the end of the conversation. Marijuana is a gateway drug. It does not mean that every person who uses marijuana is going to end up having a drug problem, but I have yet to find a single person who has a drug problem who did not start with marijuana. So let me say that again. It doesn't mean that every person who uses marijuana is going to have a drug problem, but of the people that I am aware of, every person who has a drug problem started with marijuana. Okay, who else would like to speak?
How you doing? Lieutenant Williams from the Central Substation right here. I've been in law enforcement for 27 years. I honor work with our chief when he was at the sheriff's office. I think, when did you leave the sheriff's office? He's a detective. He'd make notifications for deaths. When he was with us, I think our deputies averaged a life-saving award maybe once every 3 or 4 months. In the last 4 years, There ain't a month gone by that I haven't seen a deputy get a life-saving award, either administrative Narcan or DWI, CPR, or something. I know the mayor's on board with it. We're on board with it. We're going to do everything we can. But we can't do anything without your help. We need your help getting your kids' business, getting your family's business. Because like you said, the internet is very plentiful for everything. The Congressman Graves gave us $3 million. That's what we were allotted to the sheriff's office to help fight this battle. This battle's tough because it hits hard everywhere. I have took reports from families in here. I have seen their kids at school. We work at the school systems. I have dealt with personally. I have a brother that my kid's Uncle Joe. I got 6 kids. I'm not immune from it. They're not immune from it. No one's immune from it. Get in their business. Get in their family's business. Know what they're doing. The worst thing to do is our internet. She can tell you what it pops up every time you go on the internet. Hey, Ozempic, get it from this people. You know, Margero is great. Anyway, like I said, we got $3 million from Congressman Graves to fight this battle. The chief, the mayor, and the sheriff's office all working together to fight it. We need your help to fight. The churches are fighting it. Everyone's fighting it. You think we're going to win? We're trying our best. If you have any questions, our captain, he's down on his back, is Jason Dillman over here, Captain Dillman. He'll take any questions from you. If you want, you can call him. He's there. If it's not, we can get an email from him. Let us know. Get his number. Give it to me. I get it to him. With that being said, thank you for your time and my time.
And one thing I did do, I talked to Congressman Graves' office today, and Sawyer, his partner, that helps him do everything. He's always with Congressman Graves. He did advise me that Congressman Graves had earmarked several $1 million that he's was able to appropriate for fentanyl.
Yeah, I just want to, I know that there are several pastors in the room, and I just want to encourage you to make sure that this information gets in front of your congregations. One of the things that Candace did for our congregation was at Halloween, she came and did an awareness a presentation in our worship experience so that our congregation knew about Narcan and our congregation knew that these, how these drugs are being, how they're presenting in our community. Halloween is especially vulnerable because you never know what's getting passed in that candy. You know, it used to be apples that we checked, right? And now it's for fentanyl and these things. And it just takes such a little amount to hurt them. I'll tell you from my own experience, and one of the reasons why I'm passionate about this is that my son went and reported something that came in his Halloween candy to his school and was suspended because he got scared. He got scared that him telling the truth about him being afraid of his Halloween candy having fentanyl in it, that it kept adding, it kept adding layers of people. There were teachers, and then there were, principals, and then there was a person in uniform comes and everything. So he got scared, so he changed his story. He's like, never mind, no, cool. Well, that got him in trouble, right? So I went up, and this other thing I want you to know, parents, you have to be engaged. So I went up to school, I explained, hey, our church gave a presentation, and he looked at this, and not only should he not be suspended, he should actually be commended for the fact that he reported this to you. And so the school was absolutely on board with that, and Mr. Shows let him right back in school the next day. But here's the deal. You have to be engaged. Like, you have to care enough. You don't want to care about this after it's too late. You want to care about this before. And so I just want to say that as a parent in the community with kids, this is real, and it's happening. And we need to advocate and seek justice on the matter. What that means is God's grace in action. We want to extend as much information as we can to our community. We want to equip people for this issue. So take it seriously, put it in front of as many people as you can, and let's do the business of saving our children.
I want to amen to that. I have been asked this year, out of 3 churches in Baton Rouge to come during their church service and do this demonstration and also do the education piece. The other thing I wanted to add is vaping is now a big issue in our schools. Some of these vape cartridges are being filtrated with fentanyl. So please, please, please talk to your children about vaping. A lot of people think it's the healthy way of not smoking, and it's not.
We had a student at a football game last year or 2022. Last year, 11 years old, dared to take a hit on a vape. Person who gave it to her didn't know. She didn't know. It had fentanyl in it. She died right there. And not for the presence of a central police officer, we would not have that young lady in our community. I think they gave her 2 doses of Narcan to bring her around. So vapes are no joke either. Is there anyone else?
My name is Philip Gay. I'm the pastor of Providence Baptist Church here in Central. And I just want to talk to you just for a second from a pastoral perspective. And I'm not your ordinary pastor. I'm one of the statistics that you talked about. At the age of 14, I started smoking marijuana, and that led to cocaine. And in the 80s and 90s, I was arrested 6 times in 3 different parishes: felony theft, simple burglary, possession of cocaine with intent to distribute. I was an IV drug user. Back before heroin was around here, we had what was called sets, T's and Blues, which was Tolwyn and Benzedrine that was sold in Eden Park that you shot. And it was kind of like a synthetic heroin. I overdosed on 6 hits of LSD. Woke up in leather straps in the Greenville Springs Hospital, where I spent a week on the mental ward. I was in treatment 4 different times. I was in a halfway house for 3 months, all court ordered. By the grace of God, my last arrest for possession of cocaine with intent to distribute, somehow the cocaine in the evidence room was lost, and my case was dropped. And I had a friend of mine told me at the time, the state of Louisiana was crack cocaine. The state of Louisiana had upped the sentences, and if I had went to jail that last time I got arrested, you wouldn't be seeing me here today. I probably would have got 15, 20 years, by which time I would have been hardened. And so I want to talk to you just real quickly about what do we do. And I applaud all the people out on the front lines who are doing all different types of things to try to help people who are addicted to drugs. Treatment centers all across our land. But we see a lot of times where people just this revolving door with treatment centers. So I stand here before you today as a man who's been in pastoral ministry for 23 years. I've been the pastor of my church for 14 years that I'm currently pastoring at now. So what happened? How did I go from a person who was like I was as an IV drug user to where I am today? Well, it doesn't have anything to do with me. It has to do with the fact that I came under the power of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And Paul says in Romans 1:16, "For I'm not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God unto salvation." The gospel is the power of God, the message of the person and work of Jesus Christ, and my surrendering to Jesus Christ in saving faith and Bible repentance is what changed my life. It changed my nature, and I haven't gotten over it yet. And I'm still pastoring today. And I've been drug-free for a long time. And it's very important to me what I see happening in our community from my perspective. And I understand that there are a lot of different methods of treatment out there, and I respect every single one of them. But I'm here to tell you today that what happened to me, what changed me, was coming into contact with the power of the gospel. And if I could put it simply, and this goes for everybody, whether you're on drugs or not, a simple way to put it is that everybody has a God-shaped vacuum in their heart. And only He can fit in there through the power of Jesus Christ. And people try to put everything in there but God to fill that hole, whether it's drugs, whether it's alcohol, whether it's entertainment, you name it, whatever it is, but none of those things fill that hole. It's only the power. And people do drugs for different reasons. Some people are trying to escape pain, abuse as a child, all different manner. For me, it was just simply pleasure. That's all drugs was for me, was pleasure. But I can tell you what the root problem of drug addiction is. It's a little word nobody likes to say anymore in the church and in this country. It's called sin. That's the problem. Sin is the root problem. Drug addiction is just a symptom of sin. And the only one that can cure the sin problem is Jesus Christ. And so what I'm doing, from my pastoral perspective, when I come into contact with people who have the same story or maybe living the same story that I lived, is to say, let me tell you about a man named Jesus Christ who was more than just a man. He was a God-man. And so as from the church's perspective, that's the answer that I'm here as an ambassador of Jesus Christ to give to all of you tonight. And if you've got anybody that's dealing with drugs, if you've got a grandson, a grandparent, a kid, anybody, and you want them to talk to me, you can see me after this thing is over. I'll be happy to tell them my story and happy to introduce them to the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak? Okay, I'm not saying anybody. We can do this in this community and in any other community as many times as we need to. It's just a simple phone call to me, and I'll get it set up. I just need help getting the place and the people in the seats, and we can show these videos. I have, before I forget, thousands of business cards up here that have a QR code. Oh, there's a QR code. Will you open the box for me? Has a QR code that takes the link to all 3 of these videos. So if you want to walk out here with the entire box, I'm perfectly fine with that if you promise me that you'll get them on the street. But again, let's do this as many times as we can. Let's start talking about this everywhere as though it was the plane that crashed into the mountain tonight, and see what else we can do and make people listen. Mayor? Okay, come on. You're good. Did you want to say something, ma'am? So, what's our superintendent's name? Thank you. I lost his name. Dr. Fountain could not be here tonight. We scheduled on top of the school board meeting, which he was not happy about, but it was too late to change it. We're trying to, but Dr. Fountain has expressed to me that it is virtually impossible to get the parents of Central to come to anything if it's not a sporting event, which made me very sad, but he said that it's true. Well, yeah, I don't know. But anybody that has any ideas, I'm committed to this any night of the week. You just schedule with me in advance, and I will do these talks in every possible place, every form. And I'm guessing that probably the majority of people who spoke tonight will be standing right there shoulder to shoulder with me, because we just want to save lives. That's all we care about. Ma'am? Central Private, set it up for me. Set it up for me.
I wanted to thank Candace and Cliff, as well as Councilwoman Wells. Look, when the mayor president's office reached out, the mayors of the municipalities in the parish, she could have very selfishly decided how to do this, but she knew the real solution was not something that an untrained person should be making decisions on, because it is a lot of money. It's around 1.6 million or 2 million every other year for the next 20 years, basically. And so we were able to choose delegates, if you will, to this commission. And I was very selfish because I knew Candace as well as Mayor McDavid knew Candace, and I chose Candace first, so he had to come up with an extra person for his delegation. But we're very lucky to have a resource. Blue Cross is committed to this because, and look, my wife's in care management, and we see the effects of mismanaged care. and the opioid crisis. And so this is something I just wanted to publicly thank you for your dedication, not only to this, but to serving. And wherever Cliff went, there he is. I don't want to get him back up here. He'll go forever. But I just want to thank our citizen committee that we've put up to serve on that board, to finding the best use of these resources, because the solution is not plugging holes in a budget. It's really creating solutions with this huge amount of money. And so thank you, Candace. I just want to publicly thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Since Mayor Evans mentioned it, I'll tell you, the very first money coming out of that opioid settlement is going to Blue Cross Blue Shield of Louisiana. I was able to get $30,000 from that, and Blue Cross is using that money to print approximately 100,000 early drug education coloring books that will be given to every student in East Baton Rouge Parish. So we're super excited about that. Okay, if y'all come grab the cards, please, up here, and I'm going to ask Kenan to come back up and close us out tonight. Oh, yeah, and if you have any of Trudy's little sample Narcans, please get them back to her and see her to get your Narcan.
Would you pray with me? God, you are our loving parent, and I know that your heart is broken hearing about the suffering that's in our community. And God, I just ask that you open our hearts and our eyes to the opportunities that you have for us to step into the flow of your Spirit and what you're doing to heal our land and our people, your people. And I pray, God, that you would make us willing to have the tough conversations, to be bold, to go and be agents of your grace. Lord, that you may transform this. And in doing so, God, that it would become a testimony of how great you are. And that, God, every person in here would recognize you as healer. And I pray, God, gratitude and thanks over these people who have come forward and shared their testimonies, their grief, their stories. I thank you, God, that we have city leaders and people in our business environment and insurance and health, God, in the crime lab and the police department, Lord, that all of these people are here as part of your plan, working together to have an outcome, Lord, that restores our community and saves our children. May it be done by the power of your Spirit. In Christ's name we pray, amen.